times, he said, within a month last summer, and he never saw anything. And then when I invited him out in September of last year. All the ships came out, and in fact, they did one of the most incredible. One of the ships performed the most incredible aerial movements that just left everybody in amazement. In fact, the ship that performed this was the extraterrestrial girl who was in contact with me. But you probably want to get into questioning me about how this all happened, how I got contacted.
Right. Well, what was the maneuver it did? I mean, as long as you...
Oh, yeah, the maneuver was, okay, the light started to come in from the southwest, and we looked up, and I said, look at this. And all of a sudden, it was like an orange pulsing light. It came in, it stopped, and then all of a sudden it just started zigzagging to the left and the right in diagonal movements. And it was performing these diagonal movements faster than light speed. It was skipping in these diagonal movements. I think the craft was actually teleporting itself simultaneously. You could see it in two places in a split second at the same time. That's how fast it was moving. You could see it in one place, and then it was not more than like a split second later, it was in another place, but you could see it simultaneously skipping around. I got this on video. It's on one of my YouTube videos, so people can see it, the evidence.
Like you, I'm convinced that the UFOs absolutely do know who they're showing themselves to. After interviewing, I don't know how many hundreds of people, that eventually became pretty clear that when you see a UFO, they know it, and they're pretty much showing themselves to you.
Absolutely, because, they're telepathic, they're mind readers, the aliens. I mean, they're so evolved that all of their psychic abilities are like operating at 100% in most of these beings that pilot these types of craft.
Wow.
Yeah, they're just incredibly advanced beings, and I'm just amazed at everything that's happened to me. I never dreamed. Well, I've always kind of had it in the back of my mind it would be cool to be contacted by extraterrestrials, but I never knew what was involved and, what a process you have to go through. And, even then, once you are contacted by extraterrestrials, nothing's guaranteed. You have to live up to the criteria, the protocol or the criteria that they lay down for you in order for you to be in contact with them.
Wow. So after that first night, that must have impressed you enough to come back, because when did you start?
Oh, yeah.
What was your
since I had lived out of the state back then, I didn't make it back there too much, but it was in 2007 that I had made my return trips. And so I went back, and I started seeing this was in July of 2007. I'm out there in Pine Bush. I'm out there on some road, I think it was called, I forget the name of it right now, but it's a little bit south of Pine Bush, bordering on the town of Walden. And I'm out in the middle of this long, long, long farm road looking up at the night sky, and I see all these huge pulsing orange lights over on the western horizon, southwestern horizon. And I know they're the UFOs because these lights are shimmering orange, plasma-based lights, and they're moving very, very, very slow, almost like a snail moving. That's how slow they were moving. So anyway, I said, I'm going to try and communicate with them and see if they respond to my thoughts. So I just asked them mentally, are you the same beings that I had seen 14 years ago in the craft, in those sightings that first night we were out here? And there was like 3 of these UFOs on the horizon, and all of a sudden 2 of them took off. And one of them just started, after I had made the communication, one of them started coming towards me. And it got to this huge orange shimmering light, and then it got about a quarter of a mile away from me, and then stopped. It just stopped, and I got my camcorder out, and I'm trying to film it, and I'm looking at it. I'm zoomed in on it, and it's putting on a light show. It just started pulsing, and I could see this ring under the craft. I don't know whether it was connected with the propulsion of the craft or whatever, but it was some kind of ring of light, and it separated into two different rings. And unfortunately, my camcorder malfunctioned, so I was not able to record it that night. But I was able to see it and witness that, this craft responded to my thought and came over towards me and allowed me to see it very close up. So
I've always been to write an article about cases where people's cameras malfunction while they're trying to photograph a UFO, because it happens a lot, and it's clearly not a coincidence. There's
right.
That many cases.
Sure, and so I went away from that night pretty convinced that I had some other sightings a little bit south of that area. I went away, and on that trip I had some more sightings, and so.
Well, wait. Let me ask you this though. When you're communicating and you realize that these craft are responding to your thoughts, did you have any fear? I mean, had you read anything about UFO abductions and things like this? And because some people got really scared.
Yeah, I had some, because I heard that, there's some grays, there might be some grays and some reptilians species in the area there. I had some fear in the beginning, and I still do occasionally get, anybody, when you're dealing with beings that you haven't really met yet or anything like that, you may get a little bit of trepidation and,
sure.
About any kind of interaction with these kinds of beings, because you just, you don't know. But since they have made contact with me, since after my return home from that trip in July of 2007, now here's the good part. Here's the part where I get contacted. It was but about 3 or 4 days after I returned home from that trip that I just mentioned.
Right.
That I was home and I was thinking about things. I decided to meditate one evening, and I just started meditating. I went into a state of deep meditation. And so I'm meditating, and everything's quiet. I'm very calm. And all of a sudden, I just hear a voice inside me, in my mind. And it was announcing itself that she was a pilot of that triangular craft that I had seen on my trip out there that responded to me, and it came near and it stopped. She said she was the pilot. She was the pilot that was in that craft. She said that her name was Abena, and that she and her people come from Orion, and that their ancestors, she told me a brief background about them, who they are, how they originally came from Orion, and that now they're here in New York State, and they have some kind of a base there somewhere. And that they're here conducting scientific experiments. They're doing geodesy, which is surveying of the soil, and it just so happens that the soil and the rocks around that area are very, very rich. And I think it's several different kinds of minerals: titanium, beryllium, and zirconium.
Right.
And interestingly, all three of those rare elements or minerals, elemental minerals, are used in the construction of aerospace alloys for, aircraft.
Oh, is that right? Oh,
yeah. Zirconium, beryllium, yeah. Very interesting. I just thought that was a very interesting part of it. But no, they're conducting experiments, and they've had bases there. They haven't told me how long they've been there or anything, but obviously it's been a few decades. Yeah. Anyway, so she goes on to keep telling me that their ancestors were on Earth anciently, and they had colonies over in Egypt, and that